There's a legend told that when God was creating the world, He created the land of Israel. And He told the angels in heaven that He was going to such a beautiful country and you're going to give it to the Jewish people. And God said to the angels, just wait till you see who their neighbors are going to be. Last week, Ronald Lauder wrote an op-ed in the Jerusalem Post, and he told a horrifying story. He said there's a woman he knows who was invited to a very trendy Brooklyn neighborhood for a dinner party. Half of those in attendance were Jews. And during the conversation, they began to talk about Israel. And everyone around the table began to express very blunt anti-Israel sentiments. This was obviously during the war just a month ago with Gaza. And she was quiet, at which point someone asked her, what's your opinion? And she said, well, I believe in Israel's right to exist, and she started to defend Israel. At which point the host asked her, are you a Zionist? And she said, yes, I am a Zionist. At which point the host asked her to please leave the house. And he said, if you're a Zionist, then you're cruel. And if you're cruel, I can't have you in my house. This week's Torah portion, Moshe Rabbeinu states a prediction, a prophecy from God that 3,000 years later has been fulfilled. If you want to know that the Torah is a divine document, ask yourself, what are the possibilities of this happening if not for the fact that God ordained it? This week's parsha, Moshe Rabbeinu describes how the Jewish people will go into exile and they will be dispersed over all four corners of the earth. However, Moshe Rabbeinu says, there will come a time that God will gather you in from all the corners of the earth. And Moses says, even if your dispersion will be at the ends of the heaven, meaning in the most far-flung place, from there God will bring you back to the land of your ancestors, and you will inherit the land, and He will give it to you and your descendants. And here we are in our generation, after 1900 years of exile, from the time of the Roman occupation of Jerusalem in the year 70, in 1948, the Jewish people come back to the land of Israel, exactly as is predicted in this week's Torah portion by Moshe Rabbeinu. And literally from every corner of the earth, Jews came back, not only from other countries in the Middle East, but from places as far as Russia, from behind the Iron Curtain, from Yemen, from Ethiopia, from America, from Europe, from Australia, from every corner of the earth, Jews came back. And indeed, a miracle that a country that had 500,000 Jews in it, within 70 years, absorbed 7 million Jewish immigrants, as Israel is the home of every Jew. And today Israel stands as the largest Jewish community in the world with 7.5 million Jews. That's why we should be proud of Israel. That's why we should stand up to defend Israel, because it gives a home to every Jew in the world. But furthermore than that, it goes even beyond that. Moshe Rabbeinu says to the Jewish people that this is the land that God swore to your ancestors, gave as an inheritance. This is the land that God gave to the Jewish people when they left Egypt. But God says it's not just an inheritance. It's not just something that you assume a position because of your ancestors, because easy come, easy go. Unfortunately, when you get something without any effort, without any investment, you don't have the proper attachment to it. That's why people who inherit money often lose the money, because they didn't work for it. And therefore Moshe Rabbeinu says, it's not enough that you receive this land because it's your ancestors' land. It's not enough that you received it because you went out of Egypt, your ancestors, but because you will be given this land by God. And that's what we see with the Jewish people in Israel, that despite all the numerous wars that the Jewish people have fought to preserve Eretz Yisrael, despite all the terrorists that surround Israel, the neighbors, Israel has sent a loud message to the world. We are here, this is our home, and we're here to stay. And we're prepared to do whatever it takes to preserve our Jewish identity in our ancestral land. And we will not be deterred by fear, by intimidation, by terror. After watching what happened in Afghanistan and how difficult it is to maintain a presence, a democratic, free presence, surrounded by terrorists like the Taliban and ISIS-K, and we look at Israel for 70 years, not just fighting 1, 2, 3 terrorist organizations, dealing with Iran, with Hamas, with Hezbollah, with Islamic jihadists, with all the countries that have stood up to destroy Israel. We have to marvel at the strength and the determination and the courage of the Jewish people in Israel, and their fortitude to stand their ground and say, This is our land, not just because it was given to our ancestors, because we have inherited it, we have received it, we have been given this as a gift by God, and we will do whatever it takes to preserve this land and let it be an example for the rest of the world, how you can carve out a little piece of heaven, a beautiful country based on kindness, on love, on generosity, on empathy, on humanitarian values, on goodness and kindness that spreads way beyond the borders of Israel, even in the midst of one of the most fraught, dangerous, hostile, war-torn areas. This is what it means to be a Jew, to stand tall and proud, as the name of this week's parsha is, Atem Nitzavim Hayom, you will remain standing strong. And let this be a reason for every joy to take pride and rejoice. Have a wonderful day.